Alex awoke to the metallic scent of blood and the oppressive heat of an artificial sun. His head throbbed, his vision blurred as he blinked away the disorientation. The last thing he remembered was boarding the UEN Vanguard on routine patrol near the Andromeda Rift. Then, an explosion, alarms blaring, his body being wrenched from the ship into an abyss of light. Now, he stood in a massive coliseum, its walls forged from blackened steel, adorned with jagged alien symbols glowing an eerie red. The air vibrated with the roar of an unseen crowd, their voices a cacophony of different species, some shrill, others guttural. A booming voice echoed across the arena. "Welcome, warriors, to the game of Dominion." The words sent a chill through Alex's spine. He recognized the name. A nightmare spoken in whispers among soldiers, a brutal, intergalactic death game orchestrated by the warlord Vorkalth, where captives from conquered worlds were pitted against each other for sport. He wasn't alone. To his left, a towering insectoid creature clicked its mandibles, its forearms flexing as it assessed its surroundings. To his right, a reptilian being, scales black as obsidian, let out a guttural hiss, razor-sharp teeth gleaming. And in front of him, a woman, not human, but close. Her skin shimmered like polished ivory, with bioluminescent veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. Her eyes, large and violet, held an intelligence far beyond primal survival. A warrior's grace marked her stance, muscles coiled, ready for battle. Alex had seen many alien species during his service, but she was different. Her gaze locked onto him, reading him in an instant. A flicker of recognition? No, something else. Calculation, perhaps. Before he could speak, the arena's floor rumbled. Massive gates slid open, releasing monstrous creatures, bioengineered horrors with chitinous limbs and serrated jaws. The game had begun. Alex had fought in wars, but nothing like this. The first beast lunged at him, its elongated maw dripping with acid. He rolled aside, barely avoiding the strike. The ground sizzled where the acid landed. The reptilian warrior next to him wasn't so lucky. A second creature tackled it, claws rending through scaled flesh. A deafening screech filled the air before silence. The woman moved with deadly precision, weaving between monstrosities with effortless grace. A plasma dagger flashed in her hand, severing tendons and puncturing chitin. But there were too many. Alex grabbed a fallen weapon, a jagged alien blade, its surface pulsing with an energy he couldn't understand. A creature lunged at the woman from behind. Without thinking, he moved. The blade sank deep. A piercing shriek. The alien girl turned, violet eyes wide. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breath, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. Then, her lips parted, voice melodic yet firm. "You fight well, human." Alex smirked, wiping the dark ichor from his weapon. "You too." The carnage ended hours later. Corpses littered the arena, their blood pooling into grotesque rivers. Alex and the woman stood among the survivors. Only 6 remained from the original 20. Vorkalth's voice thundered once more. "Impressive, vermin. But the real test has only begun." A holographic display appeared above them, revealing the next trial. A labyrinth filled with death traps, shifting walls, and, most concerning, other contestants. Only one would be granted freedom, or so Vorkalth claimed. Alex turned to the woman. "Name?" She hesitated. "Alira." "Alex," he said, "we stick together." Her gaze softened, something unreadable flickering in those alien eyes. "A pact, then," she murmured, placing her hand over his. A faint warmth spread through his skin, as if something deeper than words had just been exchanged. From that moment, she was his, and he was hers, not as master and servant, not as captor and captive, but as something far more dangerous. Allies, survivors, and soon, something even Vorkalth hadn't foreseen. The ground beneath them trembled as the arena floor split apart, revealing a descending tunnel. A cold, artificial wind howled from the abyss below, carrying the scent of metal, blood, and something older, something hungry. Alex peered into the darkness. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the sensation of a predator waiting to strike. Alira stood beside him, her bioluminescent veins pulsing faintly. "The labyrinth is shifting," she murmured, tilting her head as if listening to something beyond human perception. "It's alive." "Great," Alex muttered. Like this game wasn't rigged enough already. A blaring alarm signaled their descent. With a sickening lurch, the floor beneath them gave way. They fell. Alex hit the ground in a crouch, rolling to absorb the impact. The floor was smooth metal, damp with condensation. Dim crimson lights lined the ceiling, flickering sporadically. The labyrinth stretched out before them. An endless expanse of corridors, towering walls shifting like a living organism, twisting, reshaping. In the distance, screams echoed, brief, then cut short. Alira landed beside him, barely making a sound. She scanned the area, her glowing eyes narrowing. "The walls move in intervals. They're designed to separate us." A distant clang confirmed her words as a metal partition slammed shut behind them, sealing away the other survivors. A static-laced voice crackled to life over hidden speakers. "Only one will leave the labyrinth alive." Alex clenched his jaw. He already knew the game was rigged, but this confirmed it. Alira met his gaze. "We won't survive alone." Alex smirked. "Then we don't play by their rules." They moved cautiously, sticking close to the walls. The corridors twisted in unnatural ways, leading them in circles. The air felt charged, thick with an unseen force, technology beyond anything Alex had encountered. Then came the sound, a low chittering, followed by the unmistakable scrape of claws against metal. Alira froze. Not alone. Alex gripped his stolen blade tighter. "How many?" She closed her eyes, listening. 4, maybe 5. Fast. A shadow darted across the ceiling. Then another. Not contestants. Predators. Alex barely had time to react before one of the creatures lunged. A nightmarish fusion of organic and mechanical, all serrated limbs and glistening fangs. It came for Alira. She twisted, avoiding its bite by inches. In one fluid motion, she brought her plasma dagger up, slicing through its throat. A burst of acidic blood sprayed the walls, sizzling on impact. But the others were closing in. Alex pivoted as another creature charged. He dodged left, slashing with his blade. Sparks erupted as it connected with metallic plating, barely piercing the creature's armor. "Armor's too thick," he shouted. Alira didn't hesitate. "The joints." He adjusted his angle, waiting for an opening. The moment the creature lunged again, he drove his blade deep between its shoulder plates. The beast screeched, convulsing as its own weight forced the blade deeper. 2 down, 3 more to go. But the remaining predators didn't attack. Instead, they watched. A realization struck Alex. "They're testing us." Alira nodded, her expression grim. "Then we fail the test." As if sensing their defiance, the creatures let out a synchronized screech and vanished into the darkness. The game had changed. They weren't just prey anymore. They were worthy adversaries. And that was far more dangerous. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning in the shifting maze. Alex and Alira moved as one, their silent pact unspoken but absolute. They avoided traps, navigated collapsing corridors, and stayed ahead of whatever horrors lurked unseen. But survival had a price. A distant voice broke the silence. "Help, please." Alex halted. A human voice. Alira tensed. "It's a trap?" Alex knew she was right. Of course it was a trap, but that didn't stop him from moving toward it. Alira followed, her steps wary. "You're either brave or foolish, human." "Guess we'll find out," Alex muttered. They rounded a corner and found the source of the voice. A man, young, bloodied, barely clinging to life. His uniform marked him as Terran military, like Alex. His eyes widened as he saw them. "You're real," the man gasped. "I thought," he coughed, spitting blood. "They left me here. The others, they're hunting." Alex knelt beside him. "Who?" The man's hands trembled. "Other contestants. The game, it changes you." A metallic click echoed through the corridor. Alex's instinct screamed. He lunged back just as the wounded soldier swung a concealed plasma blade, missing Alex's throat by inches. Alira reacted instantly. In one swift motion, she slammed her dagger into the man's chest. He gasped, eyes wide with shock, then slumped. Alex exhaled sharply, staring at the dying man. Son of a... Alira wiped her blade clean. Told you it was a trap. Alex looked at her. She didn't flinch. No hesitation. No remorse. Survival came first. He wasn't sure whether to be impressed or unsettled. Then, the speakers crackled again. Congratulations, warriors. The final round begins. A new path opened before them. Not a corridor. A chamber. At its center, Vorkalth himself. The warlord stood atop a throne of fused bone and metal, his hulking form clad in ceremonial armor. His crimson eyes gleamed with amusement. Behind him, a massive portal pulsed, energy swirling within. The exit. Survivors trickled in, 4 in total, counting Alex and Alira. Vorkalth's voice boomed. You have proven yourselves, but there can be only one victor. A silence fell. Then, a choice. Fight each other. Or fight him. Alex's grip tightened on his blade. Alira met his gaze. No words were needed. They had their answer. They weren't playing his game anymore. They were ending it. The air in the chamber crackled with tension, thick with the scent of sweat, blood, and ozone from the glowing portal behind Vorkalth. Alex's muscles coiled, his grip firm on the stolen blade. He knew the warlord was studying them, reveling in their dilemma: kill each other, or die by his hand. The other 2 survivors, a hulking insectoid warrior with jagged chitin and a wiry humanoid with cybernetic implants, glanced between Alex and Alira, assessing threats, calculating odds. Vorkalth let out a booming chuckle. What will you do, little warriors? Slaughter your allies for the slim chance of freedom? Or face me and be utterly crushed? Alex exchanged a glance with Alira. There was no hesitation. No deal, Alex growled. With a blur of motion, he threw his blade. It spun through the air like a lightning bolt, aimed directly at Vorkalth's throat. The warlord moved faster than anything that size should be capable of. His massive clawed hand snatched the blade midair, metal shrieking as he crushed it into scrap. Foolish, Vorkalth rumbled, but entertaining. Alex barely had time to react before the warlord charged. The colossus moved like a force of nature, his enormous bulk deceptive in its speed. Alex barely dodged as a spiked gauntlet slammed into the ground where he had stood, cratering the steel floor. Alira struck from the side, her plasma dagger a blur. She was fast, inhumanly fast, but Vorkalth anticipated her, pivoting with monstrous precision. His tail lashed out, catching her midair. Alira grunted as she was hurled into the far wall, crashing with bone-jarring force. Alex lunged for the warlord's exposed flank, grabbing a fallen plasma spear from the floor. He drove it forward. Vorkalth caught the spear with his bare hand. With a snarl, the warlord ripped it from Alex's grip and snapped it in two like a twig. The insectoid warrior took the opportunity to strike from behind, its serrated claws slashing toward the warlord's exposed back. Vorkalth didn't even turn. His tail speared straight through the insectoid's chest. A gurgling screech, a spray of dark ichor. Then the lifeless husk was tossed aside like refuse. Alex's heart pounded. This wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. Alira staggered to her feet, eyes blazing with fury. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth, but she ignored it. Alex knew one thing for certain. If they fought him alone, they would die. Alira's glowing eyes met Alex's. A silent understanding passed between them. They couldn't win by strength. But this wasn't just a battle. It was still a game. Alex turned to the cybernetic survivor. "You want to live," he barked. The cybernetic warrior hesitated. Alex didn't wait for an answer. "Then help us." A moment of hesitation, then a nod. Vorkalth sneered. "You think numbers will save you?" Alex grinned. "No, but outsmarting you might." Alira moved first, darting left. The cybernetic warrior moved right. Alex charged head-on. Vorkalth roared and swung at Alex, but this time, it was exactly what Alex wanted. The warlord was strong, but he was predictable. He had never been forced to fight as an underdog. Alex dropped at the last second, sliding beneath Vorkalth's arm. Alira struck from behind, stabbing at his spine. Vorkalth twisted, blocking her strike, which meant he didn't see the cybernetic warrior launching an EMP charge at his back. A pulse of energy erupted, cascading over the warlord's body. His armor flickered, the technology inside momentarily disrupted. Alex didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen plasma rifle and emptied the entire clip into Vorkalth's exposed side. Blazing energy blasts tore into the warlord's flesh. Vorkalth let out a roar of rage and pain, his massive body stumbling backward. His armor, normally impervious, began to fracture. It was the first time he had ever been hurt, and it enraged him. The Colossus lurched forward, his movements erratic, furious. The EMP had disrupted his internal systems. His own cybernetic enhancements worked against him. Alira capitalized. She leapt onto his back, driving her dagger into the exposed joint of his shoulder. Vorkalth howled, reaching back to grab her. Alex acted fast. He grabbed one of the fallen plasma spears, recalibrated its settings, and overloaded it. He hurled it at Vorkalth's chest. The warlord's eyes widened as the spear detonated on impact. The explosion rocked the chamber. Smoke and fire engulfed Vorkalth, his monstrous form staggering back, right toward the portal. For the first time, fear flashed in the warlord's eyes. He clawed at the ground, trying to stop his momentum. Alira leapt free, rolling across the floor as the warlord's body tipped backward. And then, he fell. Vorkalth was swallowed by his own portal. A deafening silence followed. Then, the entire arena trembled. The chamber began collapsing. The walls split apart, sparks raining as systems failed. Without Vorkalth to control the game, the entire structure was falling apart. Alex turned to Alira. She was already beside him, gripping his arm. "We need to move." The cybernetic warrior, clutching his wounded side, staggered forward. "The portal," he rasped. "It's our only chance." Alex didn't need to be told twice. The three of them ran. Behind them, the world collapsed into chaos. With a final leap, they plunged into the portal. Blinding light consumed them. For a moment, Alex felt weightless, as if the universe itself had paused. Then, they crashed onto solid ground. The scent of real air, fresh air, hit Alex like a drug. He opened his eyes. They were on a planet. A vast jungle stretched before them, twin suns hanging in the sky. In the distance, a city of shimmering spires gleamed under the sunlight. Alira exhaled sharply, her eyes wide. "This is..." Her voice caught. Alex turned to her. She wasn't just surprised. She was shocked, as if she recognized this place. Before Alex could speak, a new voice echoed from the jungle. "You survived." Figures emerged from the treeline. Not human, not enemies, but Alira's people, and they were armed. The alien warriors moved with lethal grace, weapons raised, eyes fixed on the three figures who had emerged from the collapsing portal. Their armor shimmered with the same bioluminescence as Alira's veins, the same ethereal glow coursing through their bodies. They were her people. Alira's breath hitched. She took an instinctive step forward, her glowing violet eyes locked onto the warrior leading the group. A man, tall, imposing, his dark silver skin marked with ceremonial scars. His gaze flickered over Alira, widening slightly. Then, his expression hardened. "Impossible," he murmured. Alira swallowed, her voice quiet but firm. "It's me, Valor." The name made Alex's ears perk. Alira knew him. Valor studied her for a long moment before his posture shifted. He lowered his weapon, and the others followed. "You were declared dead, Alira," Valor said, stepping closer. "Taken by the warlord's hunt years ago. None who enter the game of Dominion return." Alira squared her shoulders. "I returned." Valor exhaled, glancing at Alex and the cybernetic warrior. His gaze lingered on Alex, assessing him with open skepticism. "And you brought them?" Alex rolled his shoulders. "You're welcome, by the way." Valor ignored him, his expression unreadable. "Come." The High Council must hear of this. Alira hesitated, then nodded. Lead the way. Alex exchanged a glance with her as they followed the warriors into the dense jungle. You gonna explain what's going on? Alira's expression remained unreadable. I thought my people were gone, that I had nothing to return to. She glanced at him, her glowing eyes searching his face. I was wrong. The jungle gave way to a sight that made Alex's breath catch. An impossible city sprawled before them. Not ruins, but a thriving civilization hidden from the galaxy. Spires of dark metal stretched toward the sky, humming with pulsating energy. Hovering platforms glided between buildings, and beings like Alira moved with effortless precision, their presence like living conduits of energy. This shouldn't exist, the cybernetic warrior muttered, his mechanical eye whirring as he scanned the surroundings. Alira remained silent, her gaze locked on the city with a mix of awe and trepidation. As they walked through the streets, murmurs spread among the inhabitants. People stopped to stare. Whispers followed in their wake. Alira? She was lost. And she brought an off-worlder? Alex had never felt more like an outsider. At last, they reached a towering structure at the city's heart, an obsidian palace adorned with glowing glyphs. Inside, the High Council awaited. The council chamber was vast, its walls pulsing with light, as if the building itself were alive. At the center sat 5 elders, regal, powerful, their bodies marked with ancient bioluminescent runes. The eldest among them, a woman with eyes as sharp as knives, spoke first. You should not be here. Alira stepped forward, unbowed. Neither should Vorkalth. A ripple of unease passed through the council. Valor crossed his arms. He's dead. Alex smirked. You're welcome, by the way. The elder woman's gaze snapped to him. And you are? Alex exhaled. Alex Carter. The guy who helped make sure your worst enemy isn't around to host any more death games. Silence. Then, one of the council members leaned forward. You say Vorkalth is dead? Alira nodded. We made sure of it. Murmurs broke out. The elder woman's fingers tightened around the edge of her throne. This changes things. Alex narrowed his eyes. Changes what, exactly? The elder exhaled. There is something you do not understand, off-worlder. She turned to Alira, her voice gentler. And something you were never meant to know. Alira stiffened. What are you talking about? Valor's expression darkened. Vorkalth's games were never random. They were never just for sport. The elder nodded. They were part of a culling. A hush fell over the chamber. Alex's stomach tightened. A culling. The elder's gaze was heavy with regret. Our species is old, Alira. And powerful. Too powerful. Long ago, we agreed to a balance. Alira's voice was barely a whisper. A pact. Yes, the elder said. Vorkalth was never our enemy. He was a keeper of order, eliminating the strongest among us before they could become a threat to the galaxy. Alex felt his blood go cold. Alira's entire body trembled. You knew? You let them take me? Silence. Then, yes. Alira lunged. The room exploded into chaos. Alex grabbed Alira before she could strike the elder, pulling her back as guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. Her entire body shook with rage. You sacrificed me, she hissed. You sent me to die. Valor's jaw clenched. It was necessary. No, Alira snarled. It was cowardice. Alex's grip on her arm tightened. We need to leave. Alira's glowing eyes burned into the council members. I will never forgive you. The elder's voice was sorrowful. That is your right. But before anyone could move, the doors slammed open. A soldier stumbled in, his armor scorched, his face pure terror. They're here, he gasped. They found us. Alex's gut twisted. Who? The answer came as a deafening roar split the air. A massive warship descended from the skies, black as midnight, its hull adorned with the sigil of Vorkalth. And from its depths, figures emerged. Not soldiers, not mercenaries, but Vorkalth himself. His wounds were gone, his eyes burned with fury, and his vengeance had just begun. The entire city shuddered as Vorkalth's warship descended. Klaxons blared. The sky, once clear, now burned crimson under the glow of thrusters. Alex barely had time to register the impossible. Vorkalth was alive. The warlord strode through the main gates as if the jungle's defenses meant nothing. His armor, once fractured by their battle, was reforged, sleeker, deadlier. Energy pulsed through his veins, raw power surging beneath his obsidian skin. "You thought you had won," Vorkalth's voice boomed through the city. "You thought you could defy me." Alira stood rigid, her fists clenched. Alex swore under his breath. How the hell is he still alive? Vaylor's face darkened. He was never just a warlord. He is something more. The elder councilwoman's voice trembled. He was created to ensure our kind never became too strong. But in time, he became what he was meant to destroy. Alex narrowed his eyes. "You're saying he's not just some war-hungry bastard?" The elder exhaled. "I'm saying he is the embodiment of evolution through destruction. Every time he is killed, he returns, stronger, more ruthless." Alira's voice was quiet, but filled with cold fury. "Then we kill him again." Vorkalth raised one massive hand, and from behind him, an army emerged. Not just his usual mercenaries. No, these were contestants, survivors of the game of Dominion, warriors who had once fought for freedom and lost. Now, their bodies were twisted by cybernetic enhancements, minds wiped clean, repurposed into his revenants. And they remembered nothing but loyalty to him. "Your city will fall," Vorkalth declared, his burning gaze locking onto Alira. "And you, little warrior, will not escape me a second time." Before anyone could react, he raised a gauntlet fist, and the first wave attacked. Bladed monstrosities leapt from the shadows, tearing through civilians and guards alike. The streets erupted into chaos, blades clashing, plasma fire streaking across the sky, screams piercing the air. Alex didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen plasma rifle and opened fire. "Move!" he shouted, covering Alira and Vaylor as they darted behind cover. The cybernetic warrior, whose name Alex still didn't know, fought beside them, his enhanced limbs making short work of the oncoming horde. Alira ignited her plasma dagger, her movements a blur as she cut down enemy after enemy. But Vorkalth wasn't moving. He stood atop the highest point in the city, watching. The Elder Council had already fled deep into the citadel, abandoning their people to fight for themselves. Typical. Alex growled as he fired another shot, dropping a revenant soldier. He turned to Alira. "We need to end this. Fast." Alira's glowing eyes darted toward the central tower, the core of the city's power grid. If they could overload it, they might have a shot at disrupting whatever was keeping Vorkalth alive. She nodded once. "The tower. We destroy it." Vaylor hesitated. "That could wipe out the entire city's defense systems." Alira's jaw tightened. "They're already losing." Alex clapped Vaylor on the shoulder. "She's right. It's the only chance we've got." Vaylor cursed under his breath, then nodded. "Then let's move." As they sprinted through the war-torn streets, dodging collapsing buildings and stray plasma blasts, Alex's instinct screamed at him. Something wasn't right. And then, the cybernetic warrior turned on them. Without warning, he slammed Alira into a wall, his metal arm locking around her throat. Alex barely had time to react before the warrior's other arm morphed into a blade, pressing against Alex's neck. Vaylor spun, raising his weapon. But the cybernetic warrior's mechanical eye flashed, sending out a pulse of energy that sent Vaylor crashing to his knees. Alira gasped, struggling against his grip. "Why?" The warrior's voice was cold, unrecognizable. "I was never on your side." Alex's mind raced. Had he been working for Vorkalth this entire time? No, this was different. His posture had changed, his voice lacked emotion. And then it hit him. The warlord hadn't just been making soldiers. He had been making puppets. Alira's voice was raw. "You were with us." The warrior's mechanical eye flickered for half a second. "I don't remember." Alex clenched his fists. "Then remember this." He headbutted the warrior as hard as he could. The impact stunned him just enough for Alira to break free, slashing at the cables running along his mechanical arm. Sparks erupted, and the cybernetic warrior staggered back. Valor, still recovering, growled. We should kill him now. But Alira hesitated. Something in her eyes, something human, held her back. No, she said. We find another way. Alex grimaced. We don't have time for this. But before they could decide, a thunderous boom shook the city. Vorkalth had arrived. The warlord stood at the heart of the chaos, his burning gaze fixed on Alira. This game, he said, his voice echoing through the ruins, ends now. Alex exchanged a look with Alira. They both knew it. This was the final battle, and they weren't walking away unless they killed him for good. Valor stood beside them, bloodied but unbroken. The cybernetic warrior hesitated, his mechanical eye flickering, fighting some unseen battle within himself. Alex took a deep breath, reloaded his plasma rifle, and smirked. Well, he muttered, at least we don't have to find him. Alira ignited her dagger, her bioluminescence pulsing brighter than ever. No, she said, her voice filled with unshakable resolve. He found us. The battlefield stretched before them. A city in flames, its once thriving spires crumbling under the weight of war. Vorkalth stood at the center of it all, a monolith of destruction, his massive form wreathed in pulsating energy. He had died once, and he had come back stronger. Alex wiped blood from his brow, his grip tightening on his plasma rifle. We need a plan. Valor, bruised and battle-worn, spat on the ground. Plans don't work on him. Alira's glowing eyes locked onto the warlord. Something had changed in her. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't hesitating. She was ready. No more games, she said, voice like steel. We end this. Now. Vorkalth grinned. The warlord moved first. A blur of motion, impossibly fast. Alex barely had time to throw himself aside before a massive gauntlet fist slammed into the ground where he had stood, shattering steel and sending shockwaves through the city. Valor fired his energy rifle, a direct hit to the warlord's head. Vorkalth didn't even flinch. Instead, he laughed. You think your weapons matter? His burning gaze swept over them, amused. I am beyond flesh, beyond pain. He raised one massive hand, and the entire battlefield trembled. Alex's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. Alira's glow dimmed. Valor staggered. Even the cybernetic warrior, still reeling from his betrayal, let out a strangled gasp. And then Alex felt it, his strength draining. Vorkalth was feeding. Alira clutched her chest. He's taking our energy. Alex grit his teeth. That's why he comes back stronger. Valor's eyes darkened. He doesn't just kill. He consumes. That was the secret. That was how he survived. Every warrior who had fought him, every contestant who had died in the games, had become part of him. He wasn't just a warlord. He was a god made from the dead. Alex forced himself to stand. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He looked at Alira. She was breathing hard, but she was still standing. She met his gaze, and in that moment, they both understood. You can't kill him with strength, because strength is what he steals. We need to cut him off, Alex said. Valor frowned. From what? From the power he's feeding on. Alira's eyes widened. The tower. The city's central energy core. It was the same energy that ran through Alira's people, the same energy Vorkalth was leeching from them now. If they could shut it down, they could starve him. Go, Alira said. I'll hold him off. Alex grabbed her arm. Like hell you will. But Alira wasn't asking. She turned to Valor. Take them to the tower. Valor hesitated, then nodded. The cybernetic warrior, still struggling to regain control of himself, let out a ragged breath. I'll go with them. Alex wanted to argue, but there was no time. He looked at Alira. She looked at him. Something passed between them. Then they moved. Valor and the cybernetic warrior broke into a sprint, heading for the tower. Alex stayed. So did Alira. Because if they didn't buy time, everyone was dead anyway. Vorkalth watched them, and for the first time, he looked irritated. Running again? He sneered. Alira lifted her blade. We're done running. Alex raised his rifle. Let's see how tough you are when you don't have a goddamn cheat code. Vorkaltha's eyes burned. And then, he attacked. The warlord came at them like a force of nature. Alira met him head-on. Her plasma dagger clashed against his gauntlet, sparks flying. She dodged left, twisted right, her movements liquid and effortless. But Vorkalth was relentless. He was faster than before. Stronger. Alex fired shot after shot, but the plasma barely slowed him down. Then, a break in the fight. Alira leapt backward, panting. Vorkalth grinned. You are impressive, little one, but you have already lost. He raised a hand. Alira froze. Her bioluminescence flickered, her body locked in place. Alex's blood ran cold. No. Vorkaltha's voice was silk and steel. I have devoured warriors like you for centuries. He stepped forward. I will consume you too. Alira trembled, not in fear, but in defiance. Then, the tower exploded. A shockwave ripped through the battlefield. The entire city dimmed. The power gone. Vorkalth staggered. His glow faded. His eyes widened. Alex saw it. The first flicker of doubt. The first flicker of fear. Alira moved. Her dagger sank into his chest. Vorkalth screamed. Alex fired. Vorkalth fell. For the first time, he did not rise. Silence. Alira stood over his body, her dagger still buried in his heart. The once immortal warlord lay motionless. Alex exhaled. Is he? Alira didn't answer. Because Vorkaltha's lips curled into a smirk. You think you have one? His breath was shallow. His body was broken. But his voice was certain. Alex lifted his rifle again. Say one more word. I dare you. But Vorkalth laughed. And then he spoke his final words. There will always be another. His eyes dimmed. His body turned to dust. And Vorkalth, the warlord, the god, the nightmare of the galaxy, was no more. The war was over. The city stood. Alira turned to Alex. You stayed, she whispered. Alex exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, well, someone had to save your reckless ass. A small, tired smile crossed her lips. Then, she knelt. Alex blinked. What the hell are you doing? Alira placed a hand over her heart. You saved me. You fought beside me. You have proven yourself worthy. She lifted her glowing gaze to his. My loyalty is yours. Forever. And as the stars burned overhead, Alex realized he had just earned something far greater than survival. He had earned her. The city stood in eerie silence. The fires still burned, but the battle was over. The towering structures, once pristine, bore the scars of war. Charred walls, shattered bridges, debris scattered like remnants of a forgotten empire. And at its center, the corpse of a god who refused to die had finally turned to dust. Alex stood beside Alira, his rifle lowered but still clutched tightly. He had been in countless battles before, but none like this. He had fought warlords, creatures, and horrors that defied explanation. But nothing compared to defeating the undying monster that had shaped the fate of her people. Alira remained kneeling, her glowing violet eyes locked onto him in unwavering devotion. Alex shifted awkwardly. You don't have to do that. Alira tilted her head. I do. She stood, her expression unreadable. A life debt is not a choice, Alex Carter. It is law. You saved me. You saved my people. My loyalty is yours, until death. Alex ran a hand through his hair. Look, I didn't save you because I wanted some kind of eternal bodyguard. I did it because... He hesitated. Because what? Because she was a damn good fighter? Because she had saved his life just as many times? Because for the first time in years, fighting for someone else felt right? Alira stepped closer, eyes searching his face. You do not understand what this means, do you? Alex exhaled. Not really. Valor, who had been silently watching, finally spoke. Among our people, a vow of loyalty is sacred. A warrior who swears it cannot break it. Alira belongs to you now. Alex frowned. Belongs? Alira smirked. Not as a slave, human. As a bonded warrior. My life is yours. My blade is yours. Alex looked at her. Really looked at her. She was more than just a fighter. She was powerful, fierce, and undeniably alive in a way that no one else he had ever met was. Something inside him shifted. "All right," he said finally. "But if we're doing this, we do it as equals." Alira's bioluminescence pulsed softly. A silent agreement. Valor crossed his arms. "Now that the sentimental moment is over, we have a much bigger problem." Alex groaned. "Of course we do." Valor gestured toward the remains of the warlord's forces. Though Vorkalth was gone, his warship still hovered in the sky. The soldiers, his revenants, had collapsed when he died, their minds no longer tethered to his will. But the warship remained. Alira narrowed her eyes. "Something is wrong." A voice crackled through the damaged communication systems. "Your warlord is dead." A pause. Then, "We will take his place." Alex stiffened. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Valor's face darkened. "His empire." Alex swore. He should have known. Vorkalth wasn't just one warlord. He was part of something bigger, something ancient. And now, his death had created a power vacuum. Whoever had once feared him was no longer afraid. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Alex turned to the others. "We need to leave." Valor frowned. "This is our home." Alira shook her head. "It is no longer safe. The warlord's empire will come. They will burn this world to the ground." Valor clenched his fists. "Then we stay and fight." Alex exhaled. "Fight with what? Half your city is in ruins, and your defenses are shot to hell." Alira nodded. "We must leave. Regroup. Strike from the shadows." Valor hesitated, then sighed. "Damn it all. Fine." Alex smirked. "Good. Now we just need a ship." Valor raised an eyebrow. "And where exactly do you expect to find one?" Alex looked up at the massive warship still looming overhead. A slow grin spread across his face. "We steal theirs." The plan was insane, which, naturally, meant Alex loved it. With Alira, Valor, and a handful of remaining soldiers, they infiltrated the warlord's flagship. The ship was massive, meant to transport thousands of troops across the galaxy. But without Vorkalth's direct control, its forces were scattered and leaderless. Still dangerous, but beatable. Alira moved like a shadow, cutting down guards before they could raise the alarm. Valor and the others took control of the lower decks, securing the engines. Alex and Alira pushed toward the bridge. Every step was a fight. Automated defense turrets, rogue revenant soldiers still operating on kill protocols. But they fought their way through. And when they reached the bridge, Alex sat in the war throne of the ship, running his hands over the controls. He turned to Alira. "So, you ever stolen a warship before?" Alira smirked. "First time for everything." With Valor at the engines, the ship roared to life. The enemy realized too late what was happening. Alex's fingers danced over the controls. "All right, let's see what this thing can do." The warship tilted, its thrusters igniting. A fleet of smaller ships moved to intercept. Alira's eyes flashed. Weapons online. The ship's cannons roared. A line of enemy ships erupted into fire. Alex grinned. "I could get used to this." The warship punched through the blockade, escaping the planet's orbit. For the first time in days, Alex let out a breath. They were alive. For now, they drifted in the vast blackness of space, watching the burning world they had left behind. Alex turned to Alira. "So, what now?" Alira's gaze was unreadable. "We fight." Valor folded his arms. "You're talking about a war, Alira." Alira nodded. "Yes." Alex smirked. "Good. Because I wasn't planning on retiring anytime soon." He turned to the ship's command console. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a captain. And Alira, his warrior, his ally, his eternal bond, stood beside him. The universe had a new power rising. And the legend of Alex Carter and Alira, the human and the alien girl who defied fate, was only just beginning.